Hello and welcome to On the Cube Leadership Podcast, where we look at everyday events such as a very everyday event. Well, it was kind of like being an all-day event today about the Trump arrest. Yes, we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about Stranger Things actress. We're going to be talking about Steven Crowder. We're going to be talking about Hillsong controversy once again around Hillsong, and looking at the Bible as well to see how we can learn to be better leaders. Yeah, just looking at these everyday things that are in the news cycle as kind of metaphors. Yes, we're going to delve into them a little bit, talk about it of what we could learn as leaders, but really it's just about learning to be better leaders and learning from, rather than sitting and judging these situations, really be using these as a mirror to look at ourselves of how we can become better leaders. And we are joined, as always, by Dr. Rod St. Hill, the business.
G'day, Craig. It's good to see you. And yeah, I'm really very pleased to be with you.
Obviously, we want to be as up to date on the news cycle as possible. So we kind of plan the podcast, the day before, and kind of schedule things out and but just keep an eye on the news cycle. And obviously, some of the biggest news over the last 24 hours is Trump being arrested. Well, him forecasting that he was going to be arrested, and it's been on the news cycles all day, and I've been watching it all day. Obviously, I'm here in the Dominican Republic, so I'm on a different time cycle than Dr. Rod. He's in Australia. He's only sort of just gotten up for the day, and so I've been watching this all day, expecting to come into this podcast to talk about Trump being arrested and what that means and all this stuff, and it kind of became a non-event, but it was probably the biggest event of the day. New York was put on notice, and the police were told to wear all the best uniform, their dress uniforms, and there were barricades put out everywhere. And there was even a bomb threat at the courthouse. And there's all this like, will they, won't they, will they, won't they? Hasn't at yet. It looks likely, but Dr. Rod, what's going on with this whole arresting a president or a former president?
I would say, from where I'm sitting, a bit of a circus, quite frankly. Look, it was never going to happen like it might in the movies. That was never, ever on the cards. Look, yeah, he might be indicted. He might have to wander on down and be arrested and be fingerprinted and so on, and ask for bail, and then he'll be out again. Look, it's very, very difficult not to draw the conclusion that this is a political stunt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Look, I mean, what's it all about? There was a number of years just before his, pretty sure it was the 2020 election, sorry, the 2016 election, I'm pretty sure. A porn star, Stormy Daniels, I think her name is. Obviously, I'm not all that versed in the porn industry. She was paid off by his lawyer. His lawyer was then put in jail because of that. And then now 6 years later, I think it works out to be 7 years in August this year. So it's almost outside of the limit of statute of limitations. And so, yeah, it does seem to be a little political, especially when you're looking at New York, which is Manhattan. New York City is who's trying to arrest him. They've just pretty much decriminalized everything, and they're not arresting anyone for anything, and they're releasing criminals, and now they're arresting him for that. It's obviously quite politically charged. But our theme for today, and what I want to do a bit of a trend through is, the truth is actually revealed in our actions, right? Like there's always, we can talk the talk, but it's really, we are judged by our actions. And actually, on that point, I mentioned earlier about let's not be judgmental about these things. We don't know every situation about this. We don't know the behind the scenes. We don't know. We're only seeing what we see in the media, and we all know they are biased. Both left and right are biased. So I'm not ignorant to the fact that they're all biased and they're all going to put their slant on it and show favorable information to their side. But there was a statement that I've heard, and it's so powerful. We tend to judge people on their actions and yet judge ourselves on our intentions. We judge others on their actions and ourselves on our intentions. And so while we're looking at these things today, it's quite easy for us to say what we would intend to do in these situations and then judge these people for their actions. But I suppose that's our first leadership lesson for today is how about we make sure that we don't judge people on their actions while only holding ourselves to our intentions. Let's believe the best in people and believe that they have the best intentions with these things. But let's say with all this stuff, we're talking about that our actions actually just reveal our truth. We may, it's the old adage of you can't just talk the talk, you got to walk the walk. And this is shown with a number of our stories today, but especially with this thing with Trump, former President Trump being possibly being indicted for this thing. It kind of goes in two ways. Number one is Donald Trump, all of these little things that come out, they kind of do reveal, the actions reveal who he really is. Now, I'm not denying he's done some great things in his presidency, not denying he's done some terrible things in business and all that sort of stuff, but we are judged by our actions. We may try to sweep things under the rug. We may try to pay off a porn star, but at the end, the truth is revealed by our actions. Dr. Rod, how would you advise, let's say, Donald Trump in this moment, former President Donald Trump, how would you advise him in the fact that know that your decisions, your actions will reveal the truth about you? How would you advise him in this situation?
Oh, shut up. Great Australian advice. But look, I probably would have given him that advice on many, many, many occasions. Often the way of the wise is to keep their mouths shut. Mm-hmm. Because look, this is clearly politically motivated. You're talking about intentions and actions. A number of people, including the prosecutor in this case, have made it very clear that they intend to find something to arrest him on. Yep. And one of the ironies here is that there hasn't really been much outburst on moral grounds that, hang on a minute, this is not a moral thing to do. And if he is indicted, it's not going to be on the basis of any moral issue, because they can't. It's going to be based on a technicality in terms of how the money that was paid was actually accounted for in the books of his company or in the books of his campaign. That's what it's about. So really, we're not hearing much in the media at all about the rights and the wrongs of what he did. And incidentally, subsequently, he sued that person and won his case. My understanding is he sued for defamation and he won his case. Now, not much is being said about that in the media either. So, I mean, I use the term circus, but it is actually a little bit more serious than that. I did call it a circus a little earlier. I think, I would say to him, just sit tight, be quiet, because I think we're witnessing the undoing of hundreds of years of democracy in the United States. This has become a deliberate, long-term action by those who oppose him politically to damage him. I've got no doubt. they want to put him in jail. They want to
Yeah.
get him off the scene. They want to get him out of the public. This is a very, very serious thing to happen in any country that claims to be democratic, and not politically democratic, but established as a democratic republic. And of course,
Yep.
it was and has been a very successful republic now for hundreds of years. So we Australians find the American system confusing, hard to understand, open to a lot of corruption. To us, the knowledge that the district, that the prosecutor is funded by a far left business person who's also got the knives out for Donald Trump. I mean, we find that really difficult to understand in Australia because our justice system doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Because of the way in which many of the key positions in the justice system in the United States, they're political because they're all elected. Now, I don't think the founding fathers expected that we'd end up in a situation like this. The idea behind election really was that the people have the power, and their elected representatives, of course, are supposed to represent the people. Now it seems that they use their elected positions to prosecute very narrow political interests. In this case, the political interest is to do whatever they need to do to get rid of Donald Trump.
So let's jump on that for a moment, because obviously we spoke about, you know, your truth will be revealed in your actions of like paying off porn stars and everything like that. Like that kind of reveals a character, and it's kind of consistent. We're well aware of, let's say we're well aware of Trump's flaws, right? I think we're all aware of that. Let's look at the other side of this, of like the truth will be revealed in your actions. This circus, as you say, witch hunt, everything like that. The fact that they're saying we're just going to keep pushing until we find something. Like it's been quite obviously admitted, like they openly admitted that yeah, we're just going to keep pushing until we find something. That's kind of revealing the truth in their actions, isn't it? Like we're now kind of, as you say, the democracy is kind of falling apart, and especially, let's say, the far left, it's in all of these actions, it seems like they're getting further and further from the truth, but the truth of what they're trying to do is kind of being revealed in these random crazy actions. What do you think that truth is that's being revealed in this action?
Oh, look, again, that you ask such difficult questions, really. I mean, I think they've been fairly open about what their intentions are. They really want to get Donald Trump out of the limelight. They want to get him out of the election. They just want to get rid of him.
Yep.
And because he upset them a lot when he was in office.
Yep.
He hasn't
he
come
upset
up
the
through
system.
You bet he did,
All
because
of
he
their
didn't come up.
backdoor
He didn't
deals
even
and-
come up through the right channels.
Yep.
Right? He's not a career politician. He's someone who came in from the outside. He's someone who said what he thought. However, I would say this, in terms of the popular vote, he didn't get in by all that big a margin in 2016. So you can't say that he had, as it were, the overwhelming support of the population. But he did some things which certainly would have upset the establishment.
Yep.
He had a lot of successes. There's a fairly long list of probably 18 to 20 quite significant achievements of, if not Donald Trump directly, his administration.
Yep.
Not the least of which is the first president not to start a war or to get heavily involved in a war, and was able to broker some amazing peace agreements in the Middle East. And during his time as president, there were the highest rates of employment of blacks and Hispanics in American history, high rates of economic growth. Look, America was in pretty good condition. Now, it wasn't all because of him, lots of other factors as well. But the achievements, and particularly the fact that, like him or loathe him, he actually did in office what he said he was going to do. Now, that is a very, very rare thing for anybody in political office. And look, I was asked by some students just prior to the election in 2016, who would you vote for? At that point, it was down to two candidates, one from the Democrats, one from the Republicans. And I said, well, I would vote for Donald Trump if I had the right to vote in that election. Now, my students at a Christian university mind, they were aghast. I said, well, line up what he's promised to do with what the other has promised to do with biblical truth. And that's the basis upon which you vote. And that's the basis upon which had I been eligible to vote, I would have voted for Donald Trump. But I certainly wouldn't have treated him in the way that many evangelicals did. In other words, I wouldn't have put him on a pedestal. I don't think any politician or business leader, for that matter, should be on a pedestal, nor should pastors.
No one should be on a pedestal.
We shouldn't be creating celebrities. I just don't think that's the biblical way. The only celebrity is Jesus, no other.
Well, I mean, that was the issue when God was appointing judges and rulers over Israelites. They're like, give us a king, and he's like, I don't want to give you a king because you'll celebrate that king, and that'll be your downfall. And we saw it time and time again.
Power and will start wars and tax you and throw your sons into conflicts and all sorts of things. Look, the American political system is broken, probably not because of its structure or of the heart, where so many positions are elected. I think that goes right to the very heart of the Christian underpinnings of the Republic. But there's no doubt that the almost removal of civility in public life in the United States has done enormous damage to the Republic. It really has. I think it's the people rather than the systems that are the problem.
Because people are the thing that get corrupt, not systems.
Yes, that's correct. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert, and I don't live in America, but I don't know that if America called me in as consultant, I don't know whether I'd necessarily make a lot of changes to the systems. What we need is a really radical shift in culture. A culture that says the nation's interests matter, not my own, not my political parties. What we need is people who've got a vision, a 25 or 30-year vision.
Which you mentioned a few weeks ago when we're talking about Governor Ron DeSantis, and he kind of came up when in this topic about Donald Trump, because Trump is in Florida and in Mar-a-Lago, and they asked Governor DeSantis what would happen if he was extradited. Not that you can be for this sort of thing, but his response was just he's so poised, so polished, he's so confident, and just, even though, as you mentioned before we went live, he had an opportunity to have a dig at Trump, and he didn't. I mean, he had there was a bit of an off the cuff.
There was a little jab.
But there wasn't like, there's nothing. Like you say, someone who can come through and talk about the country and not me. That's kind of his message, and he does really carry that. But going back to one of those things that you mentioned before, what's the truth that's being revealed from these actions? And we're going to talk about Steven Crowder a little bit later on. And if you don't know who he is, you got to get to know him. We'll talk about him later. If you do know who he is, stick around. We've got some good things to say. But in one of his shows, was it today or yesterday, he brought up the stats of during a Republican president and especially Trump, how the blacks and Hispanics had increased by whatever percent. I can't remember the exact percentage. He has all the stats. The income had increased by quite a drastic amount, and yet under the Obama administration, it actually went down into the negative and stuff like that. And And he was actually talking about and revealed this amazing like information. There's like, it's so true. What are they actually trying to do? Trump and people like him and people that are Republicans and stuff are trying to build a wealthy, self-sustaining nation. They're trying to build that people can support themselves. People can be contributing members of society, things like that, right? They're trying to help people become wealthy, independently wealthy. Whereas the left, they are trying to force that people become dependent on government. And what's that? That's the Marxist view, right? That's that Marxist culture that they are trying to embed into culture, that with all the government handouts and bringing like the universal universal, what's that, the universal income, like whatever that, like
Yes,
universal
yes,
whatever, like everyone gets a minimum amount and all this sort of stuff. It's just Marxist, it's communism. It's that they are just trying to force that, and that's kind of our biggest issue of what happened in Australia, with all the handouts and everything like that. It did nothing to help people support themselves. It just got people used to reliance and on handouts. And that's kind of, I suppose, if we're to look at what's the truth that's being revealed in this, it's they are just trying anything to stop someone like Trump getting back in office and allowing people to succeed for themselves, and trying to force their Marxist view and force us as civilians of whatever country we're in. That's their view. That's their aim, is they want to force us to be reliant on government. Just look to government. What a government want. And they're even talking about this is now off like kind of off topic, but let's go there. They're talking about the 15-minute communities. Have you seen the thing about those 15-minute
I have
communities?
read a little bit about that. Yes, yeah.
That this is their aim. They're trying to force us to be these 15-minute communities. Actually, it was Tim Pool. That's on Timcast IRL. That's where I heard this, where he was talking about, there was a guy who explained it perfectly. He walked into a chicken farm and he said, "This is a perfect example of a 15-minute community. Everyone thinks that it's amazing because we live within 15 minutes of everything. We're all self-sustaining. We're all here. No one earns any money because we don't need anything because everything's provided for us." But he walks into this chicken shed and he goes, "This is a 15-minute community, right? All these chickens live all close. They have everything provided for. They have their sleep, they have the shelter, they have their food, they have everything provided for, and they get paid nothing. But everything that they produce, we take. They produce eggs and we take it. They produce eggs, we take it." And so that's the issue with these things, is we are driving with all these little things that they're trying to do. Stop Trump from helping businesses succeed, force us to be reliant on government, create this idea of these 15-minute communities, everything like that. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to force us to become reliant on government, which is Marxist. And we as Christians, as leaders, need to stand up against that. We need to make sure that we are fighting against that, because that's the truth that's being revealed in these actions. So let's move on to our next topic. I want to talk about Stranger Things and what's the truth that's being revealed by the actions of Stranger Things. Well, I'm not actually going to talk about the TV show on Netflix. I don't know if you've watched it. I couldn't stand watching it. I can't stand those types. Dr. Wright, have you ever watched Stranger Things?
No, and I no longer have a subscription to that particular service because I felt quite offended by much of their content, and that's the
Yep.
case for some other services as well. I just don't think they're contributing anything positive to human flourishing, so they don't
Yep.
get any of my money.
That's good. That's good. That's the best way to fight. Fight with your wallet. That is the best way to fight. So Stranger Things star Grace Van Dien. Dien. I don't know exactly how to pronounce that, but she was one of the stars on Stranger Things, and she's, you know, obviously, as most of the actors and actresses on Stranger Things, they've grown to quite popularity and stardom, you know, in their young years, and she's had plenty of opportunities to be able to excel in Hollywood. And she's recently announced that she's quitting Hollywood. She's not going to do any more Hollywood. She's just going to stream herself, stay at home, and not stay at home. She's obviously going to get out and do life, but she's going to make sure that she's in control of her media. She's going to stream. She's doing Twitch and other streams as well. And she says she wants to do that because, and this is how your truth is revealed by your actions. She has the opportunity to make a lot of money, and she has turned down a lot of movie deals and everything like that because she said she just couldn't stand the culture anymore. You know, there's this article that the Daily Wire spoke about. All our articles, everything we're referring to, all our articles we put below in the description. So check those out at any time if you ever want to watch the videos of things we're referring to or articles. But the Daily Wire did this article on her, and actually Michael Knowles actually spoke about this on his show as well, how she was actually propositioned by her producer, who's her boss. He employed someone he was sleeping with, and then that he asked that person to ask her to join them for a threesome. And she said that's just typical. That's just what she goes. I'm just constantly being forced into these situations, and she's had enough. And her actions are standing up for her truth. Her truth is that's not right. Her truth is her morality, her values, her as a person. She's more valuable than the money she would make from movies. And so I think it's absolutely amazing. I love seeing people actually stand up for what they believe in. People's actions like referring and actually displaying their truth, not just talking the talk, but also walking the walk. Dr. Rod, how would you advise someone that was in a situation where, because unfortunately sometimes we do have to make that decision, like to accept things that aren't in line with our values at work just to keep our job or things like that. It's a difficult thing. I'm not just saying it's not a cut, you know, it's not cut, you know, it's not a clean cut topic, right? Like it's not like, well, if it doesn't align with your values, you got to quit, because there's more to it than that. What's your advice to someone in that situation that their values are being compromised?
Well, I mean, the first thing would be to understand that it puts the individual under a lot of stress.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to understand we're dealing with someone with feelings and emotions and an identity which is under attack. So we do have to tread warily, be very gentle, and I think this is where we need to listen carefully, and not make decisions for the other person.
Yeah.
Now, I guess the bureaucrat will come out in me here. Every workplace, of course, ought to have processes that an individual can access, regardless of whether it's bullying or sexual harassment or, you know, something even worse. So we need to assure the person that we will walk with them through the processes if that's the way they want to go. If instead they want to report it to police, you know, we'll support them in doing that. So we need to be very careful that we don't actually jump in and give a lot of advice.
Yep.
Now, my own history in this goes back a long, long way to when I was very young. I've been in the university system for a long, long time. And the first instance I ever came across this was actually a case of rape. And I would have to say I would never use my response then as a basis for the kind of way in which I would respond now. I've learned a lot. Society has moved on, and we do need to be very, very cognizant of the fact that we're dealing with human beings here. Obviously, Grace has been careful not to implicate any individuals by name. She does say that she did report it to an appropriate higher authority. I don't know where that's gone. She hasn't really said anything about the outcome then. She seems to have taken charge of the situation. She was obviously in a position where she was able to withdraw from any further contracts, and is now making her own way economically, as it were, using other channels. And look, I might add, the very technology that we're using now has freed people from the need to be aligned with mainstream production studios, mainstream media, and so on.
Yep.
As you said earlier, we're going to talk about Stephen Crowder in a little while. He's been able to circumvent the traditional sort of media and so on. So modern technologies have made it a lot easier, I think, for people to avoid that. Long answer to a short question, but look, the best advice I could give anybody I wouldn't give them advice, but I would sit and listen, and then offer to walk with them through whatever process they decide upon, even if ultimately they decide, I want to keep quiet about it.
Yeah.
And I have had that experience where somebody reported an issue to me, and we went through that whole thing. Well, these are the options that you have. What would you like to do? And that particular person said, right now, I don't want to do anything. That person had my private mobile number, and knew that they could contact me at any time should they want to take a different path. And I think probably that's the best thing you can do, is to be there for them, to listen without any kind of judgment, and to offer to walk with them through whatever process they determine.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
actually,
good.
that's just outworking of neighbour love, quite frankly, Craig.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, just being there, and I like what you said about walking with them. That, because ultimately, I think that almost the answer to anything is like, that's what people are looking for. That's what people need. Not always do they need someone to tell them what to do. Sometimes they just need to know that there's someone with them, especially in a situation like this where you're in an environment, in a culture like we talk about Hollywood, where you're in a culture that everything is against you. Like, I think it's incredible that such a young person can have the fortitude to stand up for to actually know what she stands for at such a young age, and to be able to stand up for it in such a high pressure situation like Hollywood. So
Look, I hope people have a look at the video clip. I know the URL will be in the notes. Everybody should look at that. I think just because of the way she spoke, honestly, it's gripping, and I think it would be empowering to many, not just women, but men as well, who are put in a position like this, where someone who has power seeks to wield that power in a way that goes against your own moral position, or that encroaches your own well-being or health and safety. But honestly, she spoke so well, and I've watched that video a number of times already, Craig, and I think everybody should have a look at it.
There's a lot of wisdom and maturity. You can tell that she obviously has a good circle of counsel around her. Like that's what that shows. That shows me that she's been either raised by incredible parents, or has, as she's grown, had wise people around her, and been open to their guiding, which is great. But let's pull this back onto us, right? We as leaders, we can often find ourselves in these situations where we are forced to compromise our values or our morals. I've had it a number of times where I have been in partnerships or worked under someone or worked with someone where I just wasn't they weren't a bad person. They were great leaders in their own respect. They made some poor leadership decisions. As we talk about, we talk about poor leadership as being the behavior. We're on a mission to eradicate poor leadership, the behavior, not the people. We love the people. Because I know that there are many great leaders out there that just happen to make poor leadership decisions, right? For whatever reason, there's a number of different reasons. But I found myself in situations with these great leaders that just the way they may execute some things, the way they may respond to certain things just weren't aligned with the way that I believe things should be responded to, or the way that I think that things should operate and everything like that. And sometimes, like, obviously, when we're working with or under someone, there's obviously a lot of give and take. You can't like there has to be a little bit. We need to understand that sometimes when we're working for someone, we have to do things their way, and it may not be the exact way that we like it. But there's a point where you need to be aware of where your line in the sand is. And for me, it was little behaviors I didn't like. I would address it. They weren't responded to, or maybe they were responded to, but it just kind of slipped into old behavior again. And we've spoken about this before, Dr. Rod, of like the key for me was, okay, I know that our values are no longer aligned. And obviously the Bible talks about not being unequally yoked. And a lot of people think that's just, you shouldn't go into business, or you shouldn't be in a relationship with a non-Christian. No, I look at it more deeper as like it's a values thing, that you can't be unequally yoked with someone that has differing values from you. And so I found myself at a point where I'm like, I just can't do this anymore. Our values are too differing, right? But I didn't leave right away. It wasn't like I stood up and protested and left, because I sought advice of the Lord and advice of my advisors, like yourself, Dr. Rod, who's walked me through a number of these situations. And we've spoken about it before, is just make sure you seek the Lord at the right time, because yes, those values might not be aligned, but you know what? Maybe the next thing that God has for you isn't ready yet. Maybe you need to do some growing first. Maybe there's some other things that need to be in alignment. Maybe you just need to pay your rent for now. And so maybe you do need to just put up and shut up, as Dr. Rod said before, and pray about it and just seek the Lord, look for other opportunities, but don't just storm out. And obviously, she's been smart. She's obviously got a lot of finance behind her. She's made good money from what she's done so far. And she's got opportunities that she can step into. I'm sure it was a calculated decision. It wasn't a spur of the moment, a whim kind of decision. But Dr. Rod, you've mentioned that a couple of times before about, you being in situations that values didn't align, but you didn't leave right away.
Oh no, I didn't. And look, if any of the leaders I've worked with in the past, or any of my former bosses, happen to see this, I would have to say that my experience on the whole has been very, very positive. Look, I've really worked with the most wonderful managers and leaders for the entirety of my career. There have been times where there have been clashes of ideas. That's been difficult, but that's not quite the same thing as a clash of values, or leaders operating in an illegal or immoral way.
Yep.
There have been some cases where people who have been above me in organisations have behaved personally in ways that I would consider immoral, but that didn't impinge upon what was going on within the workplace. And so we just have to be quite careful about how we respond in those
Yep.
kinds of situations. there have been one or two occasions where I had issues with the competence of people above me. Again, that's not really values. And there are lots of reasons why people may appear or actually be incompetent. And occasionally there have been clashes of values. And my experience when I've prayed, God has often said, stay.
Mm.
And it's been a little while before I've really got, okay, now is time to go.
Yep.
The reason is, if you're, say, a 2IC or someone fairly senior or significant within an organisation, if you just leave, a lot of people are going to be impacted. So you really need to weigh that up
Yep.
as well. The other thing I would say is we do, and I've learnt this from my own experience, we need to be quite careful that we don't mix cultural values with moral values.
Yeah,
Because there
that's
can
good.
be quite significant differences culturally. And
Yep.
look, I've been in a position where I thought, oh, no, I don't really like the values that are being displayed here. Later on, I've come to a different understanding
Yep.
that really the difference was probably, 85% cultural.
Cultural,
So
not moral.
what I was
I really
observing
love
didn't
that.
really sit well with me culturally, but at the time, I thought it was a sort of deeper values issue. So we
Yep.
do need to take time to carefully consider what's going on. And I often use the term prayerfully consider.
Yes, that's
Don't do
good.
it on your own.
Yep.
Enlist the wisdom of the Holy Spirit. And as Craig says, often, although ultimately exit might be the best option, it rarely is the best option immediately.
Yeah, and so I think that's a great point, Dr. Rod. So make sure you're well aware, is this just a cultural value? And we're not talking, you don't have to talk about racial cultures, it's just different cultures, different worldviews.
Yes, yeah,
Like
yeah.
Dr. Rod has a different culture to me because he is a different person. He's had different experience. He grew up in Toowoomba, like that's, that he's a country boy. So we've got different cultures. Luckily, Dr. Rod and I are very, very aligned on a lot of our values, both culturally and morally. But yeah, that's actually a very good point. I'm in the Dominican Republic. There's a lot of cultural values that are very different. My wife is Dominican, and we have a lot of very different cultural values, but our moral values are the same, right? And that's actually a very good distinction, Dr. Rod, that if you feel like you're in a place that is challenging your values, determine, is this a cultural value? And if it's a cultural value, maybe I can look at how I can grow as a person to try to bridge the gap between those values. But if it is a moral value, make sure you, first of all, know what your moral values are, know what you are standing for, so that you can be aware of what is against it. And also then prayerfully consider and seek wise counsel of your amazing people around you. There's wise people around you, your pastor, your parents, like they've got some experience. So like people around you, seek the advice of wise counsel as well as counsel from the Holy Spirit as to what is the best situation and when is the best time, because maybe you're there to influence, or maybe God does have something else for you. So make sure you seek wise counsel and make sure you do it at the right time. But let's talk about leaving and doing it all at the right time. It's a perfect transition into, let's talk about our next topic, Steven Crowder. We went on a bit of a hiatus with doing our show for a couple of months over Christmas. We pre-recorded a whole bunch of shows, and then it took us a while to come back. I was having some issues with video editors and everything like that in that time, and so there was a big controversy, I suppose you could say, that was happening in the conservative media space with a gentleman called Steven Crowder. If you haven't heard of him, you have to check him out. I put all these links to all his YouTube and Rumble and everything like that. Like, go and subscribe to his stuff, because if you like our stuff, you will really, really love his stuff. Steven Crowder is, I would say, he would have to be the most, how do I say this? He would have to be the most influential, or is at least kind of almost the biggest name currently in conservative media. He is actually a comedian who does political commentary, but very comedically. But he's very straight and to the point. And he was with another conservative media organization called Blaze, and they ended his contract a number of months ago. I think it was in November or something like that. They ended his contract, and then he obviously put himself out there for offers from other media agencies, and he got into a bit of a spat with the Daily Wire. Part of me thought, I jumped from side to side during that situation. And I don't know how much we want to get into it, but we might get into that a little bit later. I'll just give you the overview of him right now. Now, he has been off the air for probably about 3 or 4 months now, and now he's been doing interviews and everything like that. I've been following him on all his interviews, and there was this controversy with the Daily Wire, who we reference a lot, and he's gone on this all-out attack against big tech, the left, and about conservatives as well, conservative media that are kind of bending their ways a little bit to feed to the big tech, which is left, and so he's back this week. He's back. He started on Monday, which is really exciting. His Louder with Crowder TV show, not TV, it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube, and now he's done a partnership with Rumble. Incredible. And I suppose the thing that let me give you some of the stats. He has 58,000 paying subscribers to Mug Club. And also, if I go across to his YouTube channel, he has almost 6 million subscribers on YouTube, and he has just under 1.2 million followers on Rumble. Obviously, he's only just started up on Rumble. Rumble is a YouTube alternative. It's kind of only available in the States unless you log on online. That's where they're focusing. It was launched out against this big push by YouTube to ban ban content. Anyone who mentions the January 6th thing, banned. Anyone who like all of that, all that demonetization stuff. Rumble launched out, and they are a free speech platform. You can talk about pretty much they don't support hate speech, they support free speech. And so Steven Crowder's done a big partnership with them, and now is putting all this stuff through there. He's still putting stuff through YouTube, obviously. But he does half of his show on YouTube and Rumble, and then continues the second part where he talks a little bit more controversial stuff and actually talks openly and truthfully about things and stuff like that. Now, I came across Steven Crowder a couple of years ago, and I actually came across him by this thing called Change My Mind, where he would actually go out to schools and set up a little trestle table and put a controversial statement on a banner and say, change my mind. Like, there's only 2 genders. Change my mind. I'm pro-life. Change my mind. Like, just those things. And he'll sit there, and I absolutely loved how he was always able to find. He would search to find what they agreed on first. That's what he'd do. Rather than trying to beat them over the head with his opinion, he'd keep winding back their argument, wind back the argument so they can find a common ground. And there's so much wisdom in what Stephen does. And going on today's topic about the truth being revealed in your actions, he was offered a massive contract with Daily Wire, and he passed on it because some of their clauses were feeding into things that weren't aligned with his values. And he stayed off the air. He could have been on the air a lot sooner, made a lot of money and all that sort of stuff. And you can just see time and time again, and I'll link some interviews below. There was an interview he did on Valuetainment with Patrick Betts. And he, just his responses to everything, for me, revealed a man that knows what his purpose is, knows what his calling is, and just lives by it. You can see by his actions, by the decisions he's making, by his streams that he's doing. Like, so for example, he's done 2 streams so far. Yesterday, his first stream has almost 2.1 million views. His stream today has almost 1.5 million views, and that's just on Rumble. If you include, there's another 1 million views on YouTube of those 2 streams. Like, someone who's getting so much exposure, making such an impact, and you can see this man, he's just speaking his truth and living it out. And I would encourage you, if you want to keep up to what's happening in the world with a bit of an entertaining twist, and from someone who just stands up for what they believe in and really does, you see the truth, their truth in their actions, you got to check out Stephen Crowder. So I know I am a bit of a fanboy, I must admit. He's kind of turned me. Actually, another thing that I love about him, Dr. Rod, and this is something that you would actually absolutely love because you're an academic, is everything, absolutely everything he talks about, he links references to on his website, and he's always going, go check my facts. He talk of facts. Like I said earlier, there was a percentage or whatever that he said about Blacks and Latinas and stuff like that increasing their average income. He quoted those exact stats and said, go and check out the report. Dr. Rod, what have you got to say for someone like Stephen Crowder, whose truth is revealed in his actions?
Well, it's like what you see is what you get. And I think that's always a good thing for public figures, not to hide who they really are or what they truly believe. I say good on him for having the courage to stand up for what he believes. In terms of the contract, look, my take on that is I did hear both sides. That's just the rough and tumble of contract negotiations, because let's face it, even conservative media organisations, they're also in business.
Yep.
And they want to cover their costs and make a profit. So contracts can become difficult.
Yep.
And sometimes even people who are quite good friends can fall out over the term of a contract. And I think there's a little bit of that which has gone on here. And obviously he was in a position where it didn't matter too much if a significant income stream dried up for a period of time.
Yep.
He is entertaining. I suppose he's a comedian. I don't know. I mean, he doesn't have me rolling all over the floor laughing.
He's actually a stand-up comedian. He does do stand-up, but yes.
Look, I haven't seen that, and obviously we here in Australia perhaps are not as familiar with a whole lot of different voices in the United States. But again, look, I think one of the virtues of our modern communication technologies, social media platforms and so on, is that you can get around the established media and create a significant presence and income stream without having to go via the more traditional media, where you are likely to be censored or heavily influenced
Yep.
by the editorial policies of those organisations or powerful people inside or associated with those organisations. So, without knowing too much about what he has to offer, certainly what little I've seen, he sticks up for what he believes in, and he doesn't worry too much about what it might cost him. But I would have to say that he's doing well.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a significant following, and in a sense, the cost or the potential cost to him of sticking up for what he believes in is perhaps not as high as it might be for some others, in a workplace or somewhere like that. So, we got to be cognizant of our environments and those sorts of
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yep.
But good on him for what he does, and certainly what little I've seen of him, he's very articulate. I haven't seen any of his stand-up comedy, but I think he's maybe not so much entertaining, but he's definitely informative, and he does back up what he says with data, with reference to data. So what he says is actually quite robust as well, which is a good thing. I don't think public people shouldn't be able to get away with simply making bold statements without being able to demonstrate that they have some evidence to back it up. And there are plenty who do that, who basically make assertions which they don't even try to back them up with any evidence. And good on him for what he does.
And one of those we've already spoken about today. And one of those is someone who likes to just make up facts. We've spoken about him already. So I think that, talk about the contract issue, and let's go into that, because I think what I like about Stephen Crowder is what's very aligned. It just really spoke to me about how I believe that we should all know what our purpose is and know what we're called to and follow that path. And it's quite evident in what he does. He was one of the first comedians to be political from the right? Obviously, a lot of comedians have been political from the left. He was one of those early ones, and he talks about being kind of shunned out of the industry and everything like that, because everyone was like, why are you talking about that stuff? But now it's popular. Like now it's like he has been a bit of a trendsetter with those things. Now, he knew his call was to use his gift as a comedian, to kind of address things comedically, but to fight this fight as an entertainer. He knows that he's a presence, a figure, and so he knew that was his call. And so he's ever you can see all through his career where he has actually stepped out of the norm and just followed his values. We spoke about values before. And for him, one of the big things is, and you say there hasn't been too much of a cost. Well, he was actually demonetized from YouTube. So he's for years not been able to make any money from his millions and millions and millions of views on YouTube, which you normally make really good money on that. He's not making money on it anymore. And so that's why he's had to do these partnerships and look for other creative ways. But the thing is, he's always said it's not about the money. He lost money, but he wanted to do this fight of like, I want to be able to say what I can, he says, I want to be able to say the truth and not be censored. And unfortunately, he's been censored. He's had videos deleted. He's had, things disappear and being demonetized and all those sorts of things. And so there's been all those challenges that he's had. Now going across to Rumble, that hopefully will be able to be fixed. But when I first saw this contract dispute, right? He first did, and I haven't put these in the link to the description, but by the time we go put this, publish this video, they'll be down in the comment section in the description. not in the comment section, in the description. I'll link his response. He did an original video where he just spoke about generically the contracts that he's seeing. And he spoke about a couple of points that were in one of the contracts. He never named anyone, anything like that. But he said, there is this particular clause. It's not about the money for me. There's this particular clause that pretty much wraps up there was kind of two things that really stood out to me. One, he was saying, they are penalizing the person who the contract is under if they get demonetized, which means they're forcing that person to play the rules of that platform. And that's what he's trying to fight against. Big tech are trying to put all these leftist Marxist views on things and trying to silence certain things. He doesn't want to be silenced. And he said he's already been demonetized, everything like that. He's just going to continue to be demonetized. And then therefore the organization he will lose his contract from it, or portions of his contract. Like I said, go watch the video for details. But the other thing was, in the contract, it was forcing them to, you must do a feature film, and you must do this each year, and you must do this each year, like part of the contract. And that's kind of like just this standard thing where everyone just has to do the same thing. I listened to that response, and I could tell that he knew what he was called to fight for. And then I heard the response from Daily Wire, who then revealed that it was their contract that he was speaking about. And then they went, Jeremy Boring, who's the CEO of Daily Wire. He did this really lengthy point by point response and went through the entire contract. I thought that was a great response. I'm like, okay, I get it. Maybe Stephen went a little bit overboard and kind of maybe there's more to the story. But then I saw Stephen's response after that. I'm like, actually, no, I get his point. And I kind of, for me, there's a couple of things that stood out. Daily Wire have obviously been called to their thing. They're called to make big money, make big changes, like start a razor company, start a chocolate company like we've spoken about before and everything like that. And maybe their values of bending to the rules of the tech company, maybe that's their ultimate strategy, and they're just looking for the money to then pour that money into other means to make a difference. Maybe that's their calling, right? And I think that's where we need to look at this thing, is like, everyone's been called to different things. It doesn't make one evil and one not. Now, in Crowder's eyes, they're evil, well, not particularly, but he kind of talks to, because they are bending to that, because that's his values. And that's okay. And I get that we're all called to different things. That's Stephen Crowder's fight. Maybe the Daily Wire's fight is something else, right? But then, as Stephen was talking about launching his own thing, and he opened it up, he said, creators, like, come and join my thing. I don't know what it is yet or anything like that, but I guarantee I will not lock you into any contracts. I won't take away I won't own any of your stuff. I just want to support you. And it was, we've spoken about, our OnPurposeCUBED leadership program, link in description, free leadership development program, shameless plug, yes. But we speak about that to be a great leader, you must pursue your purpose while helping other people pursue their purpose, while making sure we pursue the purpose of the outcome that we're pushing for. And I think that he kind of embodied that, of like, I'm doing my thing. If what I'm doing will help you do your thing too, let's work together and let's help each other rise. And I think that there's a lot of power in that. And also he said, you got these contracts that are like forcing you have to do a movie every year. You have to do this every year. He's like, I don't care about that. Like, if you're a comedian and you want to do a stand-up show once a year, go and do that. If you're a screenwriter, write a script. If you're an actor, do a movie. Like he said, like, I just want to help you do your thing well. And I think that was the big thing that really won me over with him, with all these interviews that I've seen since, is just, you can tell his heart is, he just wants to pursue his calling, but he also wants to help others pursue their calling as well. And I know that was a bit of a long rant there, Dr. Rod, and I didn't really let you jump in or contribute. That was just kind of I think that's just my my take on it, Dr. Rod, is that we need to know our calling, and we need to help other people pursue their calling, and I think that and understanding that everyone does have different callings, and that's okay. What have you got anything to add to my little rant there?
Look, you're right. We do need to be, or to recognise the assignment that we have in life, and that obviously will change over time, but it will always be aligned with God's call on our life, be that, say, as a communicator, which might then come about through an assignment in the media or something like that. Absolutely. Look, I guess the only comment I would add is I don't know that any great value was added to this whole thing by going public about the contract. That's all by either party, frankly.
Yeah.
But that's media for you, that's just, I guess, the way it is. But I don't think that was very edifying, really. And as I said, yep, look, people will have disagreements over contracts, and even conservative media organisations are looking to make money.
Yeah.
And they need to write quite tight contracts. And
Yeah.
if you don't like the contract, well, don't sign it. If you can't negotiate changes, then don't sign it. But I just don't think a public spat really is very edifying to anybody. I like what the Daily Wire does. I think they do a great service for the conservative population. I think what he's doing, Crowder himself is doing. I shouldn't use his surname. I prefer to use people's first names. Stephen Crowder is doing. Good on him. And as I say, he's articulate, he's entertaining, he's informative, and he backs up what he says by reference to the evidence. That's a good thing.
Yeah. So look, to you, Stephen Crowder, and your Mug Club team and everything like that, and over at Rumble, I wish you the best. We're praying for you and believing that that especially for people that actually stand up for leaders living their purpose, more power to you. And if you're actually out there helping other creators and everything like that pursue their purpose and fulfill their purpose, well done. We wish you the best. Yes, there's maybe some questionable ways of things are being approached, but hey, that's showbiz, as they say. But we wish you all the best. And hey, guys, if you haven't checked him out, go and give him a sub. Follow him, and let's make sure this thing, and even actually, I'll put the link below to his Mug Club, which is his subscription service, which is how he actually makes his money. Because he's demonetized on a lot of the platforms. So my encouragement to you is go and check it out, and if you see value in it, support creators that are stepping out and standing up for their values, because actions reveal truth. And talking about actions revealing truth, I want to let's just preposition this one. When our most viewed video so far has been our one where we spoke about Pastor Brian Houston and Hillsong Church. That has gone a little semi-viral and gotten a lot of certain comments. So let's talk about Hillsong again, not for the ratings. And please, my encouragement, we don't know all the facts. No one knows all the facts. There's been a lot of people hurt by certain people and certain organizations and ministries, and they've also done a lot of good. How about we just kind of, let's look at these things I want to look at these things so that we can learn to become better leaders. The reason why we use these various examples is so we can see all spheres of life of how we can become better leaders. But let's talk about Hillsong. There was an article that was written about a week ago in Christian Post, and the title is Hillsong Church Announces Changes in Financial Stewardship Following Whistleblowers Report. I saw the sermon last week where the new global senior pastor, Phil Dooley, got up one of the board members to make a very formal statement at the start of the sermon, and then he went on to preach about things. And there's been a whistleblower within Hillsong that has revealed that there's been misappropriation of funds. And I say that because it's all alleged, there's accusations, it's all rumors, it's all like there's, Dr. Rod, what is your take on this situation?
Well, I'm not going to be throwing any stones. Look, criticising Hillsong has become a bit of a sport in Australia because it has been a very, very successful church and it has helped a lot of people. Now, I don't want to diminish in any way what the so-called whistleblower has said. My understanding is that this has actually come from a workplace dispute. A whole lot of documents have been revealed through a parliamentary process where a member of parliament who clearly has no great love for Jesus or for the church in general has a lot of this material has been passed on to that particular member of our parliament federally, and they've made a statement in the parliament. And of course, Hillsong doesn't have an opportunity to take any action on that basis because of the protections that are afforded to our elected members of parliament. And there are good reasons for doing that, because we want good government, and sometimes it requires people to make statements, but they need to be responsible about it. Now, I think contextually we need to understand that Hillsong is now a denomination. It is officially a denomination. It is no longer part of Australian Christian churches, although the separation was amicable. And it was really that Hillsong, with something like 150,000 worshippers in their churches around the world every week, every Sunday, had really become too big and needed really, in a sense, to sort of grow up and leave the mothership, so to speak. So there was no issues concerning the relationship between Hillsong and the rest of Australian Christian churches. The issue is Australian Christian churches is focused largely in Australia, and Hillsong now operates in some 30 different countries. I actually haven't counted the number of campuses they have altogether, but it must be close to 200. So they're fairly large churches by the standard of the average. The average church around the globe is less than 100, and in the United States it's around about 135, I think. So they're relatively large churches. The information that I've seen that has been published doesn't really speak to me of misappropriation of funds.
Let's talk about this, because obviously ministries are under a lot of pressure. Obviously, especially, let's say, evangelical and mega churches are always under scrutiny. Obviously, going to the model of Billy Graham, right? Like, looking at Billy Graham, he was a perfect example of a pastor. He said, "Look, just pay me the average pastor's salary across America, and that's it. Like, that's all I want to earn." And then he just focused on his ministry. He didn't get caught up in the money and everything like that. Like, obviously, he's a great example of what we should be doing. And obviously, I think everyone's trying to compare what church pastors and mega church pastors are doing and mega ministry pastors are doing, and maybe trying to compare it to Mother Teresa. Maybe that's what they expect them to be, poor and not do anything. However, I have this I don't know how to say, conflicting or contradiction in my mind, or juxtaposition in my head of, I've done ministry. I've been in, I mean, we're all in ministry, but I've been a lay person in church, in running a church, and I'm a business person. And so I kind of get that, unfortunately, nowadays, most pastors are literally the CEO of their business. They are just running a business. It is a ministry focused business and things like that. And so when you look at these pastors, let's see, looking at Hillsong, and you look at, if you were to take a CEO or a leader of an organization that had 150,000 people in that organization, that CEO, that leader would be making millions and millions and millions of dollars every year. They would be driving around in Rolls Royces or whatever, and flying private jets and everything like that. Why do you think it is that we tend to, because one of the examples here is they talk about him flying first class or business class, maybe it was first class or business class, and there was one thing that said that there was a $44,000 bill or something like that to Mexico, $42,000 flights to Mexico, which is him, his wife, his daughter, and I think one of his friends in ministry or something like that, which is probably one of the volunteers in the church or something like that. Dr. Rod, what's your take on a pastor flying first class or business class?
I haven't got an issue with it. Look, in one of my former roles, I had to make a lot of overseas trips. I had to jump off an aeroplane and go to meetings pretty well straight away. I was in and out of one particular country probably 6 or 7 times in a space of a few months. Every time I went, I was probably there for a couple of weeks. It was pretty tough work. I was working probably 18 hours a day. Every trip cost over $35,000. But my goodness me, I had to work hard.
Mm-hmm.
And the same goes for pastors. Unfortunately, I think one of the, certainly from my perspective here in Australia, I think our national sin is envy.
Yeah.
And
Tall poppy syndrome.
We don't want to see anybody doing better than ourselves. I think that's just comes from the pit of hell, frankly. And I know you can look at that and you say, my goodness me, I don't earn that much in a year. I think, wow, that was a couple of airfares.
Yeah.
But you don't know the full story. That's an entry that is now public knowledge. That's been published, rightly or wrongly. It's in the public arena. There are lots of things we don't know at this point. So we don't know how much of that was reimbursed by another organisation. We don't know how much of that might have been reimbursed by the individuals involved. And look, there are plenty of organisations that have arrangements that say, look, we'll make all the bookings for you, we'll pay it, and you just tip back 30% or whatever. So I think we've just got to be really, really careful about drawing conclusions here. It doesn't concern me if the pastor of a large church actually formally earns a large salary. Because they take on a lot of risk, personal risk. It's hard work because you're virtually on call 24/7. It's very, very difficult to extricate yourself from any of the major things that are happening, be they events or crises. So you're not your own. You are very much servant of the people. Look, I don't think that we should look to feather our own nest or to build a great big property portfolio or anything like that. But it worries me a lot that we want to drag down successful pastors. We're talking about a what is now a denomination that has global reach, global influence, that has done a lot of really good things for the body of Christ and the wider community through their music, through their conferences, through their overall contribution to the body of Christ, and through the many, many good things that they do in community. I don't think we should diminish that. I think it's a good thing that Hillsong have employed forensic accountants. As I said to you before we came on air today, I've done exactly the same thing as a director, recommended to the board that under a particular set of circumstances we hire some external forensic accountants. We did that. They spent some time trawling through all of the transactions, and they produced a report for us.
Yeah.
And just by the way, our conclusion was we don't need to put anybody in jail as a result of this, but we do need to sort out some of our systems, right? That was good to get that information, good to act on it. So I salute Hillsong for doing that. I understand also from reports that they're under investigation by the National Regulator of Charities and Not-for-Profits here in Australia. It's called the Australian Charities and Not-for-Profits Commission, or ACNC for short. And look, honestly, if people make a complaint to them, and it's a large organisation, they really do have an obligation to investigate. It's not something that worries me a lot because it's reasonably routine. The investigation has been ongoing for some time, and we should just wait and see what the ACNC process results in. And look, if it's discovered that they've got systems that are just not tight enough, or policies that are not tight enough, their policy on honorariums has come to light. Look, essentially, that's an issue between you and the taxman. And if someone came to me as a pastor, for example, and said, look, I've got all of these invitations to speak and to write books and so on, I would say, in Australia, we have what's called an Australian business number. I would say you get your ABN, and then you keep a record of all of those honorariums that you paid. And when you come to do your tax every year, you tell the tax man, I've earned this much in love offerings, as we call them here, or in honorariums, and the taxman can determine whether or not that's income. Okay. Now, here, the basic ruling is that if you get that because you're working, you're doing your work, then it's income and it's taxable. And I would think that for a lot of pastors, preaching in other churches and so on, if they do that regularly, that would just count as income. Now, I've got no idea where Hillsong pastors, past and present, sit. And look, I would just say that. Look, if I was on a board, I would say, folks, if you're a pastor, you're getting invitations to speak elsewhere, you're signing contracts to write books and so on. If your own contract of employment allows you to do that, I would just say you get your ABN, your Australian business number, or the equivalent in another jurisdiction. Keep a record of all of that money that you're being paid, and you just tell the taxman and let the taxman sort it out. And if you're worried that the taxman is going to take too much, cast your worries and your cares upon him. Lay it at the foot of the cross. Let Jesus work it out.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I think that, like, let's make this relevant, that we're not like just picking on Hillsong and everything like that. To go back to the business class flights and everything like that. There is actually a real practical element. This is not just people wanting to live luxury and stuff. Like you mentioned that you did, but I don't think there's not an emphasis on. It's really hard to. My question to you, our audience, is: have you ever flown business class? I've been fortunate to fly business class once, and I understood why people actually fly business class. Now, first class, maybe that's a little bit extravagant, and there's no allegations of them doing first class, but business class, there's a massive difference. I was very fortunate to be upgraded once, and ever since then, I've been believing that, yes, I will be able to be at a stage where I can fly business class every time I fly, because you get not only before the flight, you're obviously in the lounge, you can relax, you can get prepared, you get your special treatment and stuff like that, so you don't have to arrive at time, and it's a little bit smoother of a process. And when you're busy and you're running a big ministry that has 100 and something odd thousand people across the world, you dealing with putting out 1 million fires at once, and there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of challenges you're facing, a lot of things. The less you have to think about the little things and focus on your job, the better you're going to be at that. And so if you get there and then you get onto the flight, and it's a long flight, and rather than you being uncomfortable and squished and all this, like, you get to lay down. Like when I flew business class, I got to sleep. They got massages in the chairs that, like, I got off. When I got off, I felt so fresh. I also had time to write notes and prepare for the presentation that I was about to give and stuff like. I got off and I was ready to take action. I didn't need to take a day off to kind of rest and recuperate, which we all know from long travel. You got to take a day off, and a day off both sides, and to cover jet lag. When you fly business class, you don't tend to. And so there is value in these people being able to fly in, fly out, not have to worry about, arrive fresh, do their thing, and while they're on the plane, I guarantee they're working. They're not just sitting there watching Netflix. They're working. They're sending emails. They're writing their next sermons. They're doing study like that. They're doing that because you can. That's the advantage of business class. It just kind of lends itself to that. So there is actually a practical element to it, that they are actually performing their role better because of that. And like Dr. Rod said, like, maybe the other people are paying for it anyway. The other part of it that is questionable, Dr. Rod, and this is kind of like what I want to say to let's say most people, and kind of, you're probably wondering, what's this got to do with our theme? Well, you're talking about, truth will be revealed in your actions. These people may have, well, Phil Dooley was quoted, apparently quoted to have said, I never fly first class, and then there's evidence of him flying first class. It's like, be careful of what you say, because the truth will be revealed in your actions. But the other thing that I want to look at this with, Dr. Rod, is that would make it relevant to everyone watching, is taking family, and they claim friends or whatever. Obviously, there's plenty of opportunities for us to do business, and maybe there's an opportunity for us to bring, family along. When I'm traveling for work, I try to bring my wife along so we can spend that time together, and it's a trip that we get to do together, and my clients know that she's coming, and everything like that, and they they normally contribute to her flights as well. And how's that? Where's the line of taking advantage and maybe misappropriating funds for paying for family to come along, versus just taking advantage of benefits of the job? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's perks of the job.
Look, having done a fair bit of international travel, it's no perk, let me tell you. When you have to get off a plane and go into difficult business negotiations, work very, very long hours, honestly, there's nothing junket about it whatsoever. I can assure you of that. And often we become critical because we've done nothing more than sit in an armchair and have a look at what someone has said on social media or what somebody's published somewhere. I mean, you can probably understand, I get pretty angry at this kind of thing. My question always is, so how many people have you saved this week? How many people are now followers of Jesus Christ because of your ministry, right? What have you done to help the poor and needy? What have you done, in other words, to be the answer to the Lord's Prayer to somebody in your community? Now, I'm not letting people off the hook. We have to have good systems. But look, if I was a director on a Hillsong board or a board like that, I'd have a carefully constructed contract or covenant with my pastors, and I would be prepared to recognize things like time away from home, frequency of travel, the distance traveled, and honestly, if the church had the resources, because God believes in family, I would do everything I could to ensure that work does not disrupt good, functioning, healthy family life.
That's really good.
I have no objection to a family accompanying a minister when they're on ministry somewhere. Look, we've got to, as Christians in particular, we've got to get rid of envy. Envy and strife destroy the church.
Yeah.
We've got to deal with it. We've got to grow up. And we've also got to understand that God's economy is not a zero-sum game. So if Phil Dooley or some other pastor is traveling business class, or heaven forbid, if a ministry owns a jet, we've got to get over that. We've got to ask ourselves, what influence, what good is being done here? Now, that's not to say we can be profligate or anything like that. What I'm saying is we need to sit back and we need to carefully make our decisions and judgments. But what I'm saying is, on the face of it, what was presented in the Parliament under parliamentary privilege, what has since been published, does not, in my mind, constitute anything that ought to be used to condemn Hillsong or any individuals involved. Now, we're talking here about the allegation of financial misappropriation. I see nothing to substantiate that allegation that has been released in the public arena. And look, we don't want to make judgments about any court-directed actions or anything like that. We know that there is an action which has been launched under Australia's workplace laws. We don't want to undermine anything that's going on there. But I think we need to take great, and this is something for leaders to bear in mind. I'm a leader of a small church, right? As a leader, I need to be very careful about what kind of statements I make about leaders of other churches, their boards or their pastors or their other senior people, when I don't fully know what's going on. I don't know the details about any contracts or covenants that they might have. I've got no way of judging how effective their ministry is. I need, I think, to be humble, measured, and very, very careful before I make judgment, particularly in a public space.
And we're not taking away from the fact that there's been some bad things that's happened through that. There's been people have been hurt in ministries, not just this ministry, but other ministries. We're not taking away from that. We're not diminishing the fact that, you know, a lot of people have been hurt by great leaders and by great ministry leaders. I'm not denying that, but just looking at this, the truth will be revealed by our actions. Truth is revealed by actions, and I just want to encourage us that, as Dr. Rod said, well, how many people have you saved this week? How many people have fallen back in love with Jesus that have been missing him for a while? How many people have sat under your worship this week and felt the presence of God? There may be some things that they're not doing 100% right. We're all human. We make mistakes. They are being held account for some of them, and there is some accountability that is happening as well. So let's go on to leadership lessons from Luke, and we will wrap up very quickly. This is just our last quick one. We'll wrap this up quickly because I know Dr. Rod does need to go soon. So, truth revealed in actions. Truth revealed in actions. Luke, what can we learn from our leadership lessons from Luke? Luke 7, verse 18 onwards. It's Jesus and John the Baptist. So John's disciples were like, well, is this Jesus the Messiah? Is this the one that John has been talking about? And so John sends two of his disciples and go and inquire of Jesus and just make sure he's the one that we've been talking about and we've been baptizing in and everything like that, the one that I've been pretty much dedicating my whole life to and about to get my head chopped off for. Is this the real one? And the way that Jesus responds is in verse 22. So he replied to the messengers, "Go back and report to John what you have seen and heard." See, it's about the actions, truth revealed in actions. What was the truth? Obviously, that he is the Son of God. And what were the actions? The blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cured, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is preached to the poor. The actions, like, is your truth revealed in your actions? Are you living out your truth? Do you believe in Christ and believe that he is the Son of God and believe that he is the only way? Who have you witnessed to this week? Who have you like what of your actions have revealed that truth? Jesus quite clearly, are you the man we're waiting for? Well, look at what's happening. How can we, Dr. Rod, as a pastor, I know that this is kind of a reasonably preachy topic, but how can you as a pastor give us advice of the ultimate truth being revealed in our actions, in our day-to-day?
Well, that really does put me on the spot. You'd have to ask people who know me whether I do this very well, but our speech and our actions need to align.
Mm-hmm.
So, everything that people see and hear from us should be in alignment. And so as a Christian, as a pastor, when people observe the way I relate to others, my speech and my actions must align with the heart of God and with his instructions as they've been recorded in the Bible. And I tell you what, I don't always do that well.
Mm-hmm.
I've got you can't see this, but in front of me is a whiteboard. And written up on the top left-hand side of the whiteboard, there are two words. Those words are wisdom and compassion. Some years ago, nearly 20 years ago, when I took on a very senior leadership role in a public university here in Australia, I went and prayed and I said, Lord, tell me how to do this job. And I really thought he was going to download a big handbook. I expected the equivalent of a 500-page handbook on how to be a good, godly leader. And he gave me two words: wisdom and compassion. And honestly, ever since that time, I've often stopped at the end of the day and asked myself this question: have I acted with godly wisdom in every interaction I've had with other people today? And have I treated all of those around me with compassion? And as you might expect, the answer has not always been yes, to my shame. But I've grown through this, and I think I've become a better leader as a result. But far from downloading a great manual, a how-to manual, God gave me those two words that have become a touchstone for me in my role as leader, pastor, in all that I do. And as I said, I don't always do as well as I ought. And I think Jesus' response to those disciples is really quite insightful, because he did say, look at the actions. There's the evidence. People being set free, people being healed. But the words in there as well, because he said, and the gospel is being preached to the poor. And I don't think that means people who are poor financially.
No.
The poor there are the same poor he's referring to in the Beatitudes. The poor in spirit, the ones who actually need to hear that good news. So I agree with you. What's happening here is the words, the actions are aligning, and obviously they were so well aligned that John was then prepared to accept, yes, this is Jesus, the Son of God, the promised Messiah.
Yep. And I'm willing to have my head chopped off for it.
Well, obviously he went on. Yes, that's right. Ultimately, through an impetuous commitment made by another leader, he ended up with his head on a platter. Yeah, I mean, he probably didn't realise that at the time, of course, but
no.
Yeah, he did meet an unfortunate demise.
So make sure your actions are revealing your truth. And like Dr. Rod said, like, seek the Lord to know what your truth actually is. what is your truth? His truth is wisdom, compassion. Is that the truth that he's been living today? I think it's a great thing of putting things through a lens of everything that that you do that day. Just a few words. Obviously, mine that I always lead to is purpose. Have I done everything today with purpose? And have I helped those around me fulfill their purpose? And has there actually been purpose in the things that I have done today? And as you admitted, Dr. Rod, me too. Not always is that a yes. And unfortunately, it's quite regularly not like very rarely is it yes to everything that day, but I think if we could know what our truth is and make sure our actions, I think that if you speak to, like, I mean, I can testify for you, Dr. Rod, that you definitely live out that wisdom and compassion. I've seen it. We've lived together. I've known you for many years. I've seen that. And I would like to hope that the people that work with me and know me, they would also understand that purpose is important in what I do. So make sure, looking at all these stories today, be aware, take them as warnings, but also as aspirations of us to work through, that we need to know our truth. And we need to be careful, because our truth will be revealed in our actions. We may put on a brave face. We may say the right things, but the truth will be revealed in our actions, either as a bad thing, or you can stand up strong and say, these are my truth and this is what I'm standing for. I hope that's encouraged you as a leader. I hope that you've been challenged today. If you've enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up. If any of this has challenged you or inspired your leadership, put a comment below. We'd love to be able to hear from you. And if you would like to watch any more of our content and see us do this every week, please consider subscribing to our channel. We'd love to see you for more faith-based leadership content. Dr. Rod, thank you once again, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
I look forward to being here, Craig. God bless you.
Bless you, and have a spectacular week, everyone.